You're watching Capital City Sunday.
Joining the show now is Assembly Minority Leader Greta Neubauer. Thanks so much for joining the show here this week.
Yeah, happy to be here.
All right, so let's talking about shared revenue here. Obviously, the governor said this week that he was optimistic that a deal would get done. Are you optimistic at this point that a deal will get done?
The bottom line is we need a deal to get done. We know Milwaukee's financial situation is really serious, but it's true for communities across the state. Racine, all the way up north, right, east and west, communities need an increase in their shared revenue allocations, in their funding for essential services, everything from public health to first responders to parks to libraries. So we are going to do everything we can. We are going to continue the conversations. We are going to work across the aisle and with our own party and try to find a solution that works for everyone in Wisconsin.
The latest Assembly amendment from the Republicans increased shared revenue to 15% for pretty much all of the state except Milwaukee. What are some of the other things, though, that you would need to see to sign off on this bill?
So enabling legislation for the city of Milwaukee so that they are in fact able to implement the sales tax and able to receive that revenue that they need to pay off their unfunded pension liability. There are also a number of policy items, both statewide and locally specific to Milwaukee, that we take issue with. There is no reason why the city of Milwaukee should be prevented from having positions focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion through a bill that's focused on shared revenue. There are a number of other policies in the bill that are not focused on local government or are really micromanaging, particularly Milwaukee, in a way that is both unnecessary and can harm the community long term. So we're going to continue the conversations about more money for everyone across the state. Even with that increase from Republicans yesterday, it will not cut the mustard for Racine after 10 plus years of stagnant funding. And I know that's true for many communities across the state. And then we'll work on those policy issues, and then we'll work on that enabling legislation for the sales tax in Milwaukee.
Yeah, you just mentioned the sales tax in Milwaukee. Obviously, Assembly Republicans want a referendum for the voters to vote directly on it. Devin Levenhue in the Senate said that not necessarily going to be in their version of the bill. Is that a non-starter for you, though, if it's still in that bill moving forward?
I would say that it is the bottom line for us. We really need to see enabling legislation to allow the county board and the city council to move forward on that. This issue needs to be resolved soon for Milwaukee City and County, and we need to be able to have a solution that we think will be successful and will allow them to have the resources they need.
So the bill now heads to the Senate. Speaker Voss said he's done negotiating at this point. Do you think negotiations are done? Because it would have to get obviously through the Senate and signed by the governor as is.
So the governor's made clear that he has a number of issues with the existing bill. Certainly that's true of our members in our caucus. And so we are very hopeful that we will see some improvements in the Senate and it will come back and everyone will stay at the negotiating table and continue in good faith to have a conversation about something that we can all agree on.
Wanted to shift gears a little bit because budget will be a big topic of conversation moving forward. Obviously, shared revenue, a part of the budget. Funding for K through 12 education, another major topic these days. It seems like the current revenue limit has led to a lot of referendums at the local level for school districts. Now, Speaker Voss saying that that's a sign that the system works because he wants local voters to make those decisions. Do you agree with the concept that local voters should be making those decisions?
So the reality of those referendums is what they do is they raise property taxes, right? Maybe everyone's least favorite tax in the state of Wisconsin. And when we have the kind of surplus that we have right now, projected at $6.9 billion, the state should be doing its fair share to support our public schools. We have seen through the referendums, through talking to our voters every day, that K-12 is a priority for the people of Wisconsin, and the state just has not been doing its part to support those schools and prevent increase after increase in terms of local property taxes.
Speaker Voss and others have pointed to those lowering test scores in the state as saying you can't just throw money at it, there has to also be reform hand in hand. Do you agree with that concept?
You know, of course, there are lingering impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. We've seen that here in Wisconsin. We've seen that, nationwide, and we know that there are resources that our schools need to be able to continue to improve and to meet every student's need in Wisconsin. So I think we need to do our part as the state, make sure that schools have the resources that allow every kid to have access to mental health care if they need it, right? To have access to great special education and really great resources for every kid.
Funding for the UW system, also part of the budget conversation. Speaker Voss was critical of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion spending at the university level. He even talked about potentially not funding that at all, as he said to me, quote, "The left has taken DEI to be their new religion and they are the evangelists." What is your response to that?
You know, the reality is that we live in a state that is diverse and that our diversity is a strength for Wisconsin. Trying to tie the hands of Milwaukee through the shared revenue bill or the university system or whatever target comes next is just not the right thing for the people of Wisconsin, and it is not the right thing in making Wisconsin a place where people want to come and want to live and work and study and stay long term. We see across the country major companies, right, implementing diversity, equity, and inclusion policies because they know that that allows their employees to thrive, that allows them to attract great people who want to stay. And that's what we need to be doing here in Wisconsin. We need to be taking our racial disparities and the challenges that people of color have in Wisconsin seriously, rather than trying to micromanage cities or the university system and tell them that they cannot take the challenges that they have seriously.
He says some of these policies, they'll go too far at the university level. He talked about trying to have, as he put it, more of colorblind criteria to give more underprivileged people from all backgrounds a chance at some of these university education settings. Do you agree that any of these policies go too far at the university level?
I don't. You know, I think the university has accurately, or I should say correctly, responded to the challenges that people in Wisconsin and nationwide face, particularly people of color, but we're also talking about other underrepresented groups, right? And I believe that we should allow the university to, again, look at the dynamics that exist within their school and make policies that will best support outcomes for their students and their students' learning experience.
All right, Greta Neubauer, representative, thank you so much for the time here today.
Thanks for having me.